In your mind's eye, let yourself drift now to a distant northern sea, where the air is sharp with salt and the cry of gulls echoes beneath vast, endless skies. There upon the dark wooden planks of a longship, we see her a shield maiden of the Viking world. The wind cold and fierce from the north tugs at the edges of her fur cloak. Her hand calloused from years of gripping hilt and shield rim rests, steady upon the smooth curve of a round wooden shield, its iron boss dark with the stains of past battles. In her other hand, a broad-headed axe gleams faintly in the pale light, its edge honed with the same care she might give to the braiding of her hair. She stands upright at the prow, unflinching as the waves crash and spray about her, her gaze set toward distant shores, fierce, resolute, unbroken. And now imagine a strange magic at work, a bending of time's great river. Suppose this shield maiden forged in the storms of the 9th century were to step onto the shores of modern America. The thrum of her ship's oars is replaced by the roar of traffic. Steel and glass towers rise around her, dwarfing even the proudest of Viking longships. The air hums not with the songs of skalds, but with sirens, engines, and voices speaking a tongue she does not know. She who once defended her kin with blade and shield, what would she be here? A hero standing tall against injustice, or a relic, a stranger from a world of blood and fire, lost amid neon signs and asphalt? Would her courage and strength, celebrated in sagas and whispered of in fear by her enemies, inspire admiration here? Or would her ways, forged in an age of axes, honor duels and ratings, seem savage, out of place, even dangerous? Tonight, let us journey together across time and culture, exploring this curious question: could a Viking shield maiden, with all her fierce independence, loyalty, and martial skill, be seen as a hero in modern America? Or would she be an outsider, her virtues misunderstood, her values at odds with the world around her? Close your eyes for a moment and picture her again, the shield maiden, or skjaldmær, as the Norse called her. In our modern imagination, shaped by stories, films, and whispered legends, she stands as a fierce figure, hair braided and windswept, clad in mail shield, on arm axe or sword in hand, ready to stride into battle beside men without hesitation or fear. But who was she truly beneath the layers of myth and modern romanticism? The term shield maiden appears scattered through the sagas and poems of medieval Scandinavia. She is spoken of in the Hervarar saga, where Hervor, daughter of a slain warrior, dons armor, takes up weapons, and seeks to claim her father's cursed sword from his burial mound. She is evoked in the Saxo Grammaticus's Gesta Danorum, where we read of women who fought alongside men who rejected marriage and home to embrace the warrior's path, and who at times commanded armies or led bands of fighters. Yet historians, ever cautious, remind us these accounts are as much literature as record blending, fact and fable, memory and embellishment. Archaeological finds, such as the famous grave at Birka in Sweden, where a woman was laid to rest with a warrior's weapons and gaming pieces, hint that some women did indeed live and die as warriors. But how many were they celebrated exceptions, or was the shield maiden a symbolic ideal, a figure embodying courage, defiance, and the disruption of expected roles? In Viking society, a woman's primary duties, according to most records, lay in the realm of the home, managing farms, overseeing households, ensuring the survival of family and community during long winters and dangerous seasons. Yet the sagas leave space for women of a different mold, those who refuse the expected path. They fought not only on battlefields, but in legal disputes, in matters of honor, in duels of word and will, at the thingsteads where the free assembled. Imagine, if you will, a Norse farmstead, the thatched roof heavy with snow. Inside, beside the hearth, a young woman sharpens her father's sword. Perhaps she does this out of necessity with brothers gone to sea, or perhaps in defiance because she feels the pull of battle, of proving herself where few expect her to tread. The sagas and poems give us glimpses of these women, Lagertha, who fought to save her people, Freydis, who in Greenland's wilds seized a sword and faced down attackers with terrifying resolve, Brynhildr, the tragic Valkyrie, embodying both shield maiden and supernatural warrior maid. Yet even as we recount their names, we must ask, where does history end and the storyteller's embroidery begin? Were these shield maidens warriors in the sense we would recognize today, trained, disciplined, part of the warband? Or were they symbols fashioned to express ideals of loyalty, defiance, and the breaking of chains, archaeology offers tantalizing clues, but no certainty. In the graves of Viking women, weapons sometimes appear a spear here, an axe there. But were these tools of battle or symbols of status, wealth or ritual? The Burka grave for long debated leans toward the former, the woman buried with sword and shield, the gaming pieces suggesting command, the horse sacrificed beside her as for a warrior of rank. And yet some scholars still hesitate, cautious of reading too much into too little. Still, the Shieldmaiden endures not just as a figure of the past, but as an idea. She represents the Viking world's openness to challenge, to the blurring of boundaries, to the possibility that in moments of need or destiny, anyone might take up the sword. And so as we think of her stepping onto the streets of modern America, amid neon signs and glass towers, sirens and screens, we begin to see the question form more sharply. This woman who defied expectations in her own time, who stood where few believed she had a right to stand, how would she be received here now? As a hero, as a curiosity, as a threat? But before we can answer that, we must look deeper still into the values she carried, the code she lived by, the fire that made her more than just a figure on a battlefield. And as you listen, as you imagine the whisper of wind across the North Sea and the silent strength of a woman at the ship's prow, you might wonder what part of her lives in us still. Picture again, if you will, that lone figure upon the ship's deck. The salt spray stings her cheeks, and the low, endless roll of the northern sea fills her ears. Yet beneath the outward signs of battle, the mail shirt, the battered shield, the worn grip of her axe, lies something deeper. It is not the blade that defines a shield maiden, nor the shield itself. It is the values she carries, the codes she lives by, the quiet fire that shapes each choice she makes. Let us linger with her a little longer and consider what these values might be. First among them surely is courage, courage in its purest form. But this is no reckless thirst for battle, no hunger for bloodshed. The shield maiden's courage is steadier, quieter, forged not in boasting, but in action. It is the resolve to stand when others might fall back, the willingness to face what must be faced, be it a charging foe, a storm at sea, or the slow grinding hardship of life in a land both beautiful and unforgiving. Hers is the courage that steadies not only her own hand, but the hearts of those who fight beside her. And with courage walks loyalty, loyalty fierce and unshakable. A shield maiden fights not for gold or glory alone. She fights for kin, for hearth, for the bonds that tie one soul to another. In the sagas, time and again, we find tales of women who defend their families with as much ferocity as any man. They stand by their oaths, protect their communities, and when betrayed, act to restore the balance that loyalty demands. The shield maiden's faithfulness is not blind. It is chosen and it endures. Then there is sacrifice for the good of the community. In a world where survival often depended on the strength and unity of the group, the shield maiden embodied the willingness to set aside personal safety, even personal desire for the well-being of the larger whole. She did not fight for herself alone. When she took up arms, it was with the knowledge that her death might shield others, that her actions might buy time or peace or hope for those she loved. There is nobility in such sacrifice, quiet and enduring. Yet beyond these virtues of the warrior's path lies something perhaps rarer still: independence, self-mastery. The shield maiden, in choosing the life of a fighter, defied the roles the world laid before her. In doing so, she claimed authority over her own path. She answered not to custom nor to expectation, but to the voice within that said, "This is who I am." In a time when women were often expected to remain within certain bounds, the shield maiden stepped beyond them, not always without cost, but always with conviction. There is power in that choice. It speaks to a deeper value, still the challenge to gender norms that her very existence represented. In standing beside her male peers as an equal on the battlefield, in commanding, in defending, in shaping her own destiny, the shield maiden questioned by her actions rather than her words the notion that courage, strength, and leadership belonged to one sex alone. And in doing so, she became a symbol not only of martial skill, but of the broader human capacity to break free from the chains of assumption. Let us imagine for a moment how this would have felt within her world. To be a woman who stepped onto the field of battle was to stand always on the edge between honor and censure, between celebration and suspicion. The sagas show us that shield maidens were admired, yes, but also feared or pitied or treated as strange. They were honored, yet they walked a path fraught with risk, not just of the body, but of the soul, for they defied the order that kept their society stable. That they did so regardless speaks to a kind of inner strength as vital as any sword arm. And so as we contemplate her stepping now into the modern world, we begin to see how these values, courage, loyalty, sacrifice, independence, defiance of imposed limits, might resonate still. Are these not the very virtues that many today still seek in heroes? The capacity to stand firm in the face of fear, the choice to act not for self but for others, the willingness to challenge what is unjust or outdated even at personal cost, the strength to claim one's own path. Yet too, we might ask, how would these same qualities be perceived here now? Would her courage be seen as admirable or as aggression? Would her loyalty bind her to causes we deem worthy or to codes we no longer honor? Would her defiance inspire or unnerve? Would we see her independence as strength or as threat? The shield maiden carries with her a mirror, one that reflects not only the values of her time, but those of ours. In her, we see courage and loyalty. But we also see the questions that arise when a person steps beyond the lines drawn by custom and comfort. The questions that remain as relevant now as they were 1,000 years ago. And so as the wind shifts and the long ship draws closer to this strange modern shore, we are left to wonder, what would we see looking up at that figure at the prow? A hero bearing ancient virtues into a new age, or something we struggle to name, caught between respect and unease. Let us imagine her now, the shield maiden, having crossed that invisible threshold between ages, stepping down from her ship onto the concrete shore of modern America. The hum of the city rises around her, sirens in the distance, the steady drone of traffic, the rhythm of countless footsteps moving to unseen destinations. The air smells of oil, asphalt, and hot metal rather than salt and pine. She walks forward, her boots striking pavement instead of sand, her eyes meeting a world both strange and familiar. And here we pause to ask, how would the values she carries, those ancient virtues forged in the fires of a very different world, resonate in this new land? Would modern America recognize in her the hero it so often seeks? Or would it struggle to understand her courage, her loyalty, her defiance? At first glance, it may seem that her courage would find a ready home here. After all, America has long celebrated those who stand against the odds, who act despite fear. From the pioneers of the frontier to the activists of civil rights movements, from firefighters rushing into burning buildings to ordinary people defending the vulnerable, courage remains a virtue widely admired. The shield maiden's readiness to face danger, not for glory, but because the moment demands it, could easily be seen as heroic in modern eyes. And yet, would the form of her courage fit the expectations of today? Her courage is physical, immediate, born of a world where dangers were met face to face with blade or shield. In an age where challenges often come in subtler forms, in boardrooms, courtrooms, through legislation or civil discourse, would her instinct to stand and fight be seen as outdated? Or could it remind us of something we fear? We have lost the willingness to act decisively, to risk oneself for others without calculation. Consider next her loyalty, that deep bond she holds to family, to kin, to community. Modern America values loyalty too, to ideals, to nation, to friends and family. We honor those who keep their word, who stand by their loved ones through hardship. The shield maiden's loyalty would surely be recognized, perhaps even celebrated. And yet here too lies complexity. Her loyalty is personal, tribal in the truest sense. It binds her to people rather than abstract principles. In a society that often prizes loyalty to universal ideals, to justice, equality, freedom, would her fierce devotion to her own kin be seen as too narrow, too exclusive? Or would it stir something primal within us, a reminder of the bonds that hold us together when the world turns cold? Her willingness to sacrifice for the community would at first glance seem to fit well with modern American values. After all, we honor those who give of themselves for the greater good: soldiers, first responders, volunteers, caregivers. The shield maiden's readiness to lay down her life for those she loves would resonate deeply. But here too lies a subtle tension. In her world, sacrifice often meant physical combat, the taking of life as well as the giving of it. In modern America, heroism is more often framed in terms of preserving life of healing rather than harming. Would her brand of sacrifice born of a warrior's code be seen as noble or as troublingly violent? Then we come to her independence, her self-mastery. Surely this would find a place in America's pantheon of admired traits. The self-made person, the individual who shapes their own destiny, is a cherished figure in the American imagination. The shield maiden who refuses to let society dictate her path, who claims her own place in a world that might seek to confine her, she embodies this ideal. And yet her independence is forged in a context that modern eyes might find harsh. She carves her place not just through determination, but through strength of arms, through the defiance of roles that were meant to keep her safe, perhaps even unseen. Would we celebrate this, or would we worry that her independence comes wrapped in the language of conflict rather than cooperation? Finally, we must consider her challenge to gender norms. Here, surely she would find allies in modern America in those who champion equality, who break barriers, who fight for the right to define one's own identity. The shield maiden who refused to be bound by the expectations of her sex, who stood as an equal in the shield wall, would find kinship with the trailblazers of today. Her very existence would echo the struggles and triumphs of those who push back against limitation. And yet even here her story might provoke unease. For while she defied gender roles, she did so not to transcend violence, but to embrace it. She claimed a place among warriors, but modern gender equality movements often seek to dismantle systems of violence, not to gain a seat at their table. Would her defiance inspire, or would it raise difficult questions about what kind of equality we seek and at what cost? And so we see that the values she carries, courage, loyalty, sacrifice, independence, defiance of unjust limits, would indeed find recognition here, in this America of glass towers and busy streets. But the form these values take, the way they are expressed, might leave many unsure. Would she be hailed as a hero, or would the world struggle to reconcile the virtues she embodies with the methods she might choose? Imagine her now standing at a busy intersection. People pass by, some stare, some avert their gaze. The traffic light blinks red, then green. A child looks up at her wide-eyed, sensing something both strange and noble. And somewhere within the city's noise, the question hangs: what would we call her, this woman out of time? Hero, threat, or mystery? As we move forward on this quiet journey, let us look more closely still at the tension between the warrior's path and modern notions of heroism, at the uneasy dance between valor and violence. For it is there that the heart of this riddle may lie. Now let us pause on this path and truly consider the hardest question of all, the one that lies at the very heart of the shield maiden's journey into our time. For if courage, loyalty, sacrifice, and independence are virtues we can admire, then the means by which she expressed them, the language of steel and blood, is something we may find harder to embrace. Can we in modern America celebrate a hero whose world was one of violence? Or does her strength, so noble in its own age, become something uneasy, even dangerous when brought into ours? In the Viking world, violence was not merely a choice, it was often a necessity. The harshness of the land, the precariousness of survival, the constant rivalries between clans and chieftains, all combined to make the warrior's path a respected, even essential one. A shield maiden earned her honor through readiness to fight, through skill in battle, through the ability to defend her people with axe and shield, when all other safeguards had failed. In her time, this was not savagery, it was duty. It was the price of peace, paid in readiness and at times in blood. But here now, as she stands amid glass towers and beneath neon lights, what place is there for that duty? In modern America, heroism is still linked to bravery, but the contexts have changed. The heroes of today are often those who protect life without taking it, the firefighter who runs into the burning building, the doctor who works through the night to save a stranger, the teacher who shields her students when danger strikes. Even in the military, where the defense of the nation calls for courage and sacrifice, there is a deep tension and ever-present effort to distinguish necessary force from brutality, to honor the protector without glorifying destruction. And so we must ask, would the shield maiden's way forged in the clash of arms be seen as heroic? Or would it trouble us, remind us too much of what we strive to move beyond? Would we see in her a protector of the innocent or a relic of an age when might alone was right? Consider for a moment the Shieldmaiden's axe. In her world, it was a tool of survival, of justice, of last resort. In ours, it might be seen as a symbol of aggression. Imagine her intervening in a moment of danger, stepping forward as she once would have to protect a stranger from harm. But would her instinct to fight to draw a weapon be met with gratitude or with fear? In a society bound by law, where violence is regulated, where the taking up of arms is reserved for those with special authority, her readiness to act might seem rash, even criminal. And yet perhaps we judge too quickly. For even today, we honor those who in moments of crisis risk themselves to shield others. The person who rushes into the fray to defend the weak, the bystander who intervenes to stop an attack, the soldier who stands between danger and home. In these moments, we glimpse the same spirit that would have driven the Shieldmaiden, the same fierce resolve that says, "Not while I stand." The difference perhaps lies in how that resolve is shaped and where it finds its place. In the Viking Age, the Shieldmaiden's world expected violence. It was woven into the fabric of life. In ours, we hope for other paths, first law, dialogue, restraint. Violence, when it comes, is meant to be the last choice, not the first. A Shieldmaiden might struggle with this. Her strength was in action, in the clear, immediate response to threat. Would she have the patience for courts for negotiations, for the slow machinery of modern justice? Or would she find herself at odds with a world that asks its heroes to wait to trust in systems rather than their own hands? There is, too, the question of law itself. In her time, the warrior's code and the law were often one and the same. Justice could be swift, personal, delivered by blade if need be. In ours, the law is meant to be impartial, to restrain passion, to protect even the guilty until guilt is proven. The Shieldmaiden's sense of justice, fierce, direct, unbending, might be at odds with such restraint. Would we see her as a hero or as someone dangerous to the order we prize? And yet, as we ponder this, we might also see in her something we still long for: the hero who stands when others hesitate, the one who acts when delay would mean ruin, the one who places herself between danger and the defenseless, not because the law commands it, but because her heart does. Imagine her now in a moment of modern peril, a child in danger, a stranger under attack, a community threatened by sudden violence. Would she not act, and would we not in that moment call her hero, even as we struggled afterward to make sense of her methods? In truth, perhaps the Shieldmaiden challenges us not simply because of the violence she embodies, but because she forces us to ask, what is heroism truly? Is it the deed or the intention, the method or the result? The Shieldmaiden's way is a mirror reflecting both our admiration for courage and our discomfort with the means by which courage has so often been expressed. And so, as the city's lights flicker and the night deepens, we are left with this question: can we honor the warrior's heart without embracing the warrior's blade? Can we find in the Shieldmaiden a hero for our time, not by taking up her weapons, but by understanding the values that shaped her hand? Let us continue on then to see how the stories we tell in books, on screens, in the shared myths of our age might help us answer this. For in our heroes, real and imagined, we reveal what we long for and what we fear. And now, as we walk further into this reflection, let us look at how modern America might come to know the Shieldmaiden, not through her deeds upon some city street, but through the lens of its media, its stories, its symbols. For in every age, the stories we tell shape how we see heroism and how we choose to honor those who break the mold. Picture her first as the camera might see her standing tall against a darkened skyline, hair lifted by an unseen breeze shield slung across her back axe at her side. Perhaps you've seen this image already in some form. For while America may not speak of Shieldmaidens as the Norse once did, its culture has created its own versions of the warrior woman, the figure who defies expectation, who fights for justice, who claims strength in a world that might otherwise deny it. Consider Wonder Woman, born of comic book pages, but now a global icon. She too is a warrior from another time, another place, stepping into the modern world with powers and values that do not quite fit yet speak to something timeless. Like the Shieldmaiden, she wields both strength and compassion. Like the Shieldmaiden, she walks the fine line between protector and threat, admired by many, feared by some. And in her, we glimpse what a Shieldmaiden might become in the American imagination, a symbol of empowerment, of equality, of the right to stand one's ground. Or think of Katniss Everdeen, the reluctant rebel of the Hunger Games. No sword or axe perhaps, but the same fierce loyalty, the same willingness to fight for family, to sacrifice for the greater good. Like the Shieldmaiden, Katniss challenges the structures that would control her. She becomes, through her defiance, both hero and symbol, not just for her fictional world, but for a generation of readers and viewers who see in her a reflection of their own struggles. And there are others, the warrior queens of fantasy epics, the battle-tested heroines of science fiction, the historical figures reimagined with strength and agency that history may not have fully granted them. In each, we see echoes of the Shieldmaiden spirit, and in the way these figures are received, we see how modern America might receive her too. For there is a hunger still for heroes who challenge limits. The success of these characters suggests that the Shieldmaiden, if introduced through film or fiction, could indeed become an icon not of violence, but of strength tempered by purpose. The shield and axe would become symbols, not of aggression, but of readiness, the willingness to stand to defend, to refuse surrender. In the hands of modern storytellers, the Shieldmaiden could inspire, could remind us of the power that lies in choosing one's own path. But even here, the path is not without shadow. For just as the Shieldmaiden might be embraced as a symbol of empowerment, she could also be misunderstood, misused, turned into something she never was. Modern media has a way of simplifying, of sanding away complexity. The Shieldmaiden's story, her defiance, her sacrifices, the tension she lived between admiration and censure, might be flattened into mere spectacle. The depth of her loyalty, the cost of her courage might be lost beneath the gleam of armor and the clash of weapons. And there is another danger still. The Shieldmaiden's image taken out of context could be twisted into a justification for aggression rather than defense, for domination rather than protection. We have seen in various times and places how symbols of strength can be co-opted, turned from sources of inspiration into tools of division. The Shieldmaiden would not be immune to this. Her acts meant to defend could become, in the wrong hands, a banner for those who seek to glorify violence rather than the values that gave it meaning. Yet perhaps this too is part of her gift to us, that she would force us to think carefully about the symbols we choose, the stories we tell. To ask, what is it we truly admire in our heroes? Is it their power or their purpose, their strength or the cause for which they use it? And so in our books, our films, our games, we might welcome the Shieldmaiden as a symbol of equality, of resilience, of the right to choose one's destiny. But we must also remember the complexities she carries, the cost of her defiance, the weight of her duty, the hard choices that shaped her path. Picture then her face on a mural, a comic book cover, a movie poster. How would she be drawn? What would she be made to represent? And as you consider that image, perhaps you feel the gentle pull of a question that has echoed through this entire journey in celebrating the Shieldmaiden. Are we ready to embrace not just her strength, but the values and burdens that came with it? And so we move forward to imagine, if she truly walked among us, not as a symbol, but as a person. How might she find her place? Could she serve, lead, inspire? Or would she remain always a stranger in a strange land, caught between admiration and misunderstanding? And now, as our quiet reflection deepens, let us walk alongside her a little longer. Let us imagine that the Shieldmaiden, no longer just a symbol painted on a mural or shaped in fiction, truly steps into this modern land, not as an idea, but as flesh and blood. Where then would she go? How would she find her place among us? Could a woman forged in the fires of the Viking Age belong in this world of highways and courtrooms of laws written in books, rather than in honor oaths of battles fought with words and votes rather than blades? It is easy perhaps to picture her joining the military, to see in her the makings of a soldier, a marine, a guardian in uniform. After all, here is someone who has known the discipline of arms, who has stood without flinching in the face of danger, who understands the bond of comrades in defense of something greater than herself. And yet, would she find satisfaction there? Modern armies are built on systems, on chains of command, on obedience to distant authority. The Shieldmaiden's loyalty was personal, her duty bound to faces she knew, to kin and clan and hearth. Would she thrive in a world where orders come not from those she trusts, but from strangers far removed from the danger she faces? Perhaps she would find a place in law enforcement or emergency response, as one who runs toward danger, who shields the vulnerable. And surely there her courage would shine. Yet again, we must wonder, would she accept the restraints these roles require? Could she set aside her instinct to act decisively as she was taught in her own world and instead wait for backup, for protocol, for the slow machinery of modern justice to turn? Or would she chafe at the hesitation, the caution, the layers of process that separate intention from deed? And if not in uniform, then where might she become a teacher, passing on the wisdom of resilience and courage? Could she find a home in advocacy, fighting with words rather than weapons for those who have no voice? Or would the world's noise, its endless arguments and careful negotiations, feel strange to one who learned that action speaks loudest? That right and wrong are not matters for endless debate, but for the clarity of the moment. Perhaps she would find her way to small communities where deeds still matter more than titles, where loyalty to neighbors and courage in daily life count for as much as any grand cause. Perhaps she would build Protect Guide not as a warrior of war, but as a warrior of peace. And yet even here would she always feel the pull of the old ways, the urge to act swiftly to resolve threats with strength when the world around her asked for patience. There is also the question of how society would receive her. In a land that prizes diversity, that celebrates those who defy convention, she might be admired at first. The media might paint her as a symbol of strength, of defiance, of ancient virtues reborn. But beyond the headlines, beyond the admiration, there might come unease. For she would not fit easily into any box. Too fierce for some, too bound by old codes for others, too quick to act where modern sensibilities prefer reflection, too loyal to the personal perhaps in a world that asks for loyalty to the abstract. Imagine her standing at the edge of a protest, watching as voices rise, as banners wave. She understands the passion, the desire for justice. But the tools, words, petitions, votes, these are not the tools she was taught. Would she join in or stand apart? Could she learn to wield these new weapons of change? Or would she remain always a figure slightly apart, respected perhaps, but not fully understood? And there is the question of connection. The Shieldmaiden's strength came not only from her own will, but from the bonds that tied her to family, to kin, to the small world she fought to protect. In the vastness of modern America, in cities of millions and communities scattered across continents, where would she find that kinship? Could she forge new bonds as deep as those she once knew? Or would the sheer scale, the distance, the anonymity of modern life leave her adrift, longing for the closeness of a world now gone? Yet perhaps, just perhaps, she would teach us as much as we might try to teach her. Perhaps her presence would remind us of values we sometimes forget, that courage is not measured in fame nor loyalty in slogans, that to act for others, to stand firm when it is easier to turn away, is heroism in any age. Perhaps in her quiet way, she would become not just a figure out of time, but a mirror in which we see ourselves more clearly. And so we come to this, the Shieldmaiden's challenge is not only to belong, but to help us ask, what kind of belonging do we offer? What kind of heroism do we honor? In a world that speaks so often of inclusivity, of valor, of justice, are we ready to embrace those whose courage looks different, whose loyalty binds them not to ideas, but to people whose instincts come not from laws, but from the ancient code of the heart? Picture her one last time in this moment, standing at dusk, the city lights flickering around her, the sounds of this age blending into the silence she carries within. A stranger, yes, but perhaps not so strange after all. For beneath it all, in any time, in any land, we seek the same thing: to stand for what matters, to protect what we love, to find our place in the story of the world. And so now, having journeyed so far with her, let us turn the question around. We have asked, could the Shieldmaiden find her place in modern America? But perhaps the more searching question is, does modern America, in its vastness and complexity, need a Shieldmaiden? Could the values she carries, carved into her by wind and wave, by oath and action, offer something this age has forgotten or longs for without knowing? Consider for a moment the world she would see upon stepping ashore in this century. A land filled with promise and contradiction. A land where wealth and poverty stand side by side, where voices call for justice, even as injustice persists, where technology connects and divides, where freedoms are cherished yet fragile. A land of great power, but also of quiet, aching loneliness in the hearts of many. In such a place could the ancient virtues of a shield maiden offer not a threat but a balm. First, think of community. The shield maiden's loyalty was not to a nation-state, nor to abstract ideals carved into stone. It was to people, to family, to neighbors, to those whose faces she knew, whose lives were bound to hers. Modern America, for all its strengths, often struggles with connection. In cities of millions, it is easy to feel alone. In a world of constant communication, true belonging can feel out of reach. Perhaps the shield maiden's fierce personal loyalty could remind us of the power of small circles of bonds forged in trust and shared struggle, in daily acts of care. Perhaps she would teach us that heroism begins not on the grand stage, but at the hearth at the street corner, wherever we choose to stand for one another. Then consider courage, not the courage to dominate, but the courage to act when action is hard. In an age where problems are vast and tangled, where it is easy to feel that one voice, one deed cannot matter, the shield maiden's example might remind us otherwise. She teaches that sometimes it is the simple act of standing firm, of saying no to what is wrong, of defending what is right, even in small ways, that shapes the world most deeply. And this is a lesson as needed today as ever. Think, too, of sacrifice. The word can seem old-fashioned now in a time when self-fulfillment is prized, when we are encouraged to seek our own happiness first. But the shield maiden's path was built upon sacrifice, not blind nor bitter, but chosen. She placed the needs of others before her own, not because she was forced, but because she understood that a life lived only for oneself is no life at all. In an age that sometimes feels fractured by individualism, could this spirit not offer healing? Could her readiness to give of time, of strength, of self, inspire us to knit our communities closer, to see beyond our own walls? And then, most delicately, there is her defiance, her refusal to be limited by roles assigned at birth, by expectations set by others. In modern America, where the struggle for equality continues on many fronts, where old assumptions still linger, despite new laws, the shield maiden's quiet rebellion could speak with particular force. Not as a call to arms, but as a call to live with integrity, to be as she was, fully oneself, no matter the cost. Yet, of course, we must face the shadow as well. The shield maiden's world was one of violence, of harsh choices, of a code that often demanded blood for honor, blade for blade. We must ask, can we embrace her virtues without reviving the darker parts of the world that shaped them? Can we honor her courage without glorifying conflict? Can we learn from her loyalty without falling into narrowness? Can we admire her strength without forgetting that the greatest strength may lie in choosing peace? And perhaps that above all is the shield maiden's truest gift to us. Not the axe nor the shield, but the question she forces us to ask. What kind of strength do we seek? What kind of hero do we need? Is it the one who stands ready to fight, or the one who stands ready to serve, to build, to heal? Picture her now standing at the edge of a crowd. The noise of this modern world swirls around her speeches, siren songs. She listens and she watches. She sees courage in places where none expected it. She sees loyalty in quiet acts of kindness. She sees sacrifice in parents working 2 jobs, in nurses staying past their shifts, in strangers helping strangers in times of crisis. And perhaps she smiles just a little, for in that moment she knows the spirit she carried across the sea is already here, hidden in plain sight. So does modern America need a shield maiden? Perhaps not in form, not the warrior with axe in hand, but in spirit, in heart. In that, perhaps we need her now more than ever. And as we come to the close of this journey, let us leave her standing there amid the lights and the noise, a bridge between past and present. A reminder that heroism does not belong to any one age, or one people, or one kind of fight. It belongs to all who choose to stand with courage and grace for what is good and true. And so at last we return to where we began, to that image that first stirred your imagination. The shield maiden stands still beneath the glow of neon signs where once the northern lights would have danced above her. The hum of the modern world surrounds her, the pulse of headlights on rain-slick streets, the quiet rhythm of footsteps on concrete, the low murmur of distant voices carried on the wind. She wears no crown. She asks for no praise. She simply stands as she always has, steady, watchful, ready. Her armor, once battered by axe blows and storm-driven spray, now catches the reflection of city lights. Red, gold, silver, fleeting glimmers that play across her shield and the edge of her axe. Around her, life flows on, people hurrying home, A street musician playing a forgotten tune, a child tugging at a parent's hand, glancing up in wide-eyed wonder at this strange figure from another time. And we too look upon her, not as judges, but as seekers. We see the courage in her stance, the loyalty in her gaze, the weight of sacrifice in the lines of her face. We see perhaps not the weapon in her hand, but the strength in her spirit. And we ask ourselves quietly, tenderly, what would we call her? Would we name her hero, stranger, guardian? Or would we simply recognize in the stillness of that moment that what makes a hero is not the century they come from, nor the weapons they bear, but the values they refuse to set aside? For in every age we need those who stand when it would be easier to sit, who speak when silence would be safer, who act when waiting would mean loss. The Shield Maiden reminds us of that, not through grand gestures, but in the quiet constancy of one who chooses again and again to protect what she loves. And so as you drift now toward rest, let the image linger a little longer, the Shield Maiden beneath the city's glow, not out of place but timeless. A figure who belongs wherever there are hearts that long for courage, for loyalty, for strength with purpose. And as you close your eyes, perhaps you'll carry this gentle question with you. If she stood beside you now, not as legend, but as friend, what would you call her? If this story has stirred your thoughts, or if the image of the Shield Maiden has touched something deep within, I warmly invite you to share your reflections in the comments below. Your voice helps keep these ancient echoes alive. And if you found peace in this tale, please consider giving it a gentle like, sharing it with kindred spirits who might find comfort here too, and subscribing to join us on future journeys through history's quiet corners. Together, let us keep these stories sailing on into the night.